If you understand your people, your assets, your data, your business process, what threats, what vulnerabilities, is that going to lead to? And are you mitigating them? Do you have a process in place to deal with them? And then the real key one for me is the lessons learned, is that every single incident, every single test, every single exercise should be followed by a lessons learned where people are open and honest and truthful. There's no blame. It's all about making us all stronger and making us all better.
Welcome to Threat Vector, the Palo Alto Networks podcast, where we discuss pressing cybersecurity threats and resilience and uncover insights into the latest industry trends. I'm your host, David Moulton, Director of Thought Leadership for Unit42. Today I'm speaking with Sam Ainscough, Group Chief Security Officer at Hill & Smith PLC and a member of the CISO Advisory Board at Dune Security. Sam is a passionate information security advocate with over 2 decades of experience in the industry. His career spans various leadership roles, from head of IT operations and CISO at Barrett Steel Limited to his current role at Hill & Smith PLC. He is known for bridging the gap between senior management and technical teams, helping organizations build robust cybersecurity strategies that align with business goals. Today, we're going to talk about cyber resilience and cyber risk, a topic that has never been more critical. With organizations facing an ever-growing number of cyber threats, the ability to anticipate, withstand, and recover from incidents has become essential. Sam, welcome to Threat Vector. Really excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to me a little bit about your LinkedIn profile photo. The one that says, be brave enough to suck at something new. When I saw that, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, that really stood out. And I'm curious, what's the story behind that? And has that influenced your journey in cybersecurity?
So I started off in cyber well before the word cyber came along. So I've been doing this for many, many, many years now. And I guess it's that, it's that age-old chart of, as you get more skilled, where your confidence is, And I got to a point where I really thought I was quite a good cyber guy. And then I'd been and done a couple of bits of training and stuff like that. And I'd worked with some really quite, quite credentialed individuals. And I was sat there thinking, oh, well, I'm pretty good at this. And then I went on a training course and realized that I absolutely sucked. And I was really, really terrible. It was that realization in that first morning of the training. I just realized what the world was out there that I just didn't know anything about. And that's kind of where it came from, really, was dropping yourself into an area where you realize that you're not very good at this, but you're going to work really hard to get better. And that's really where it came from, was that, don't be afraid to drop yourself into a technical area, a management area, wherever it is, be it speaking on stage, whatever it is, just go and do it. Don't expect that you're going to be great to start with. Just go and do it. And, very few people are good right at the start of these things. You need to hone your craft. You need to gain your skills during that process. Yeah, that's where it came from.
I find that sometimes once I know how to do something really well, I get bored of it and want to seek out the thing that's next, seek out something new and novel. But when you make that commitment, there's this anxiety, there's this moment of doubt, and to be able to redirect that energy from fear and something that stops you to something that motivates you and gets you going. Have you found a technique that allows you to pull that off?
I basically almost give myself a yes day, really, when those things come along, because I used to it very much used to be a no from me. That when something came along that frightened me, I would go, oh, no, I'll stay away from whatever it is. But now I deliberately challenge myself and just say yes. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember that everybody started somewhere. And yes, fair enough, you may be a leader in whatever it is, within your company, within whatever technical field it is, whatever, you may be a leader in those, but you don't know, nobody knows everything. And there is nothing wrong with pushing yourself and wanting to broaden, your horizons and broaden your skill set. It's, there's nothing wrong with that. So once you embrace the fact that you may fail, but that's okay, that kind of frees you up to really go for it.
Years ago, I gave myself a challenge of a year of yes. I said yes to every challenge, every opportunity, everything. It was unbelievably exhausting, but it was a pinnacle year in my career where I took off because all the failures didn't matter so much.
Mhm.
I worked through them. And the wins that came out of saying yes to all those opportunities was unlike anything I'd ever done before. So I can really appreciate it. I think that's what got my attention when I read that picture, as profile on your LinkedIn. And I felt like we were kindred spirits there. So today we're going to talk about cyber resilience and cyber risk and what they really mean. Let's just start with, how do you define cyber resilience, and why do you think it's critical for businesses today?
We invest very, very heavily in tooling, in people, in processes to try and prevent as many incidents as possible. But they will happen. And the business needs to be cognizant of the fact that they're going to have to deal with these periodically. And just like anything in life, you are only prepared for it if you practiced it. No one picks up a violin and plays a violin. No one no one steps on a tennis court and beats Roger Federer. There is an awful lot of practice that goes into being good at these things. And cyber resilience is the same. We need to prepare appropriately. So for me, it's a case of, making sure that we are preventing as many attacks as we can, but then, the ones that do get through our defenses, detecting them as quickly as possible, responding to them, not just technically, but also from a business perspective, to make sure that we're responding, containing and eradicating that, that incident as quickly as possible, and then helping the business to recover with the least impact, suffered. And then probably most importantly out of this is then having a feedback loop at the end, that's where we take that incident and we use it as a learning opportunity to inform how we're going to respond to the next one when it comes along, and making sure that we're not going to get bitten by any of the things that we did the first time round. That we've ironed out any bugs that we've seen in the process, and that we've closed any vulnerabilities, gaps, mitigated everything that we can. We've learned everything we can from that incident, and then we apply it going forwards.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about assessing cyber risk. What, in your opinion, are the key components of a really comprehensive cyber risk assessment?
Everything we do boils down to risk. Every single control that we put in place should be because of an identified risk. We should be trying to mitigate that risk in the best way, the most effective way, whilst bringing the least amount of friction to the business. And that really should be what guides everything that we do. So when it comes to things like a cyber risk assessment, I'm looking for things like, say, I want to understand the threat, because the threat for a financial services business is very different to the threat for us. A threat for a defense contractor is very, very different to the threat for a manufacturing business. It's so really understanding that threat model. Do you understand your threat landscape? Do you understand, the business processes, the processes that support your business? Understanding your people is another key factor for me. Do you have, say, highly skilled users? You've probably heard the stories of, highly skilled security people working in high security environments that are, tunneling music streaming services through into the SOC so they can listen to it on the night shift. Those sorts of things. If you're contending with those kind of people, with that kind of level of skill, your threat profile is very different. Do you have a lot of shadow IT out there? Do you have people consume a lot of different SaaS applications? Do you have a well curated set of applications that you run, or is it basically a free for all where anyone can just sign up for anything? Where are your assets? Do you have an asset inventory? Because if you don't know what you've got, you probably aren't securing it.
Bingo.
So
Yeah.
what assets have you got? Where are they? What state are they in? Are they patched? Are they up to date? Are they riddled with ransomware? You don't know. What is the risk? Can you quantify the risk of that device? Of that person, of them operating at a particular time of day, doing a particular thing? Can you build a picture of risk for somebody? Where is your data? And not just where is it, but do you have any understanding of the the differentiation in sensitivity of data that you hold. Do you have personnel data that's protected in a particular way, or is there just a general pool of data that everybody has access to? Those sorts of things. What vulnerabilities do you have? So, if you understand your people, your assets, your data, your business process, what threats, what vulnerabilities, is that going to lead to? And are you mitigating them? Do you have a process in place to deal with them? And are you closing them out in in an effective way? And then are your controls effective? So you've got all of the risks and threats there. Are your controls effective for mitigating all the things that I've just talked about? And are you doing it in an effective way? Like I said earlier on, are you introducing the least amount of friction possible to the business to achieve the goal?
Can you walk us through some of the key steps for an effective incident response and recovery?
During the incident, you then move into identification. So making sure that you can, that you can quickly identify an incident and that you can communicate it appropriately. Because if someone spots it but then doesn't tell anybody, then that's not really helping you. And if someone spots it and then runs around ringing alarm bells, but not following the actual correct procedure for escalation, again, that's not really helping anyone. So making sure that people are trained appropriately. If they identify it, do they know the process to follow? Do they know the people to talk to? And do you have resilience in that process? So if someone's on holiday, if someone's in meetings, whatever it is, then, do you have a process you can follow that's resilient? Then you move into containment. So can we contain the incident? Can we stop it from getting any worse? And do we understand exactly what's happened? Have we got a full scope view of what's happened during this incident? And we want to make sure that during this process that we're not going to end up cleaning up part of the environment, but then leaving the attacker in an entirely different piece of the environment because you didn't have a full view of what happened. Then you move into eradication. So how do we eliminate the attacker from the environment cleanly and make sure that we're not going to restore, arbitrarily restore back up from 2 days ago where the attacker was actually still dwelling in the environment and just giving them the keys to the kingdom once again, things like that. Then you move into the recovery phase, so making sure that we've eradicated them from the environment, but now how do we get back to normal? How do we get away from that DR as a service environment? How do we get away from the workarounds of things that we've put in place during the incident and get the business back to normal with the least disruption possible? And then the real key one for me is the lessons learned. Is that every single incident, every single test, every single exercise should be followed by a lessons learned where people are open and honest and truthful. There's no blame. It's all about making us all stronger and making us all better. And if anyone can identify anything during that process where we can save a bit of time here, we can save some disruption there, then we should absolutely be building that into the process going forwards and potentially refining our process, refining our policies, so that next time it happens, that we've learned all those lessons and we make it as painless as possible for the business.
And it seemed to me that you were talking about how critical clear, crisp, intentional communication is. Not saying something, that's a problem. Lighting up everybody in the organization without intention, also a problem. I've not heard anyone put it in such a clear manner, but it strikes me that either one of those, the mute or the running around making everyone active on it, but not in the right way, both of those waste time, right? Both of those put you at risk. Sam, one of the things that you talked about was the planning that needs to be done, the preparation that needs to be done ahead of time. And employee training and awareness, I think, falls into that category. How critical is it to have employee training to building a resilient organization?
It is really important. The way that I phrase it is I see this as no different to PP, personal protective equipment, in a manufacturing environment. You wouldn't dream of allowing an operative into a manufacturing environment without the, safety shoes, hard hat, potentially face visor, goggles, whatever it is they need, ear defenders. You wouldn't dream of allowing them to do that without them being appropriately trained on how to use the crane and how to use the forklift and having a forklift license and all the other things that go with that. Cyber training should be the same. It should be viewed in the same way. It is just as critical. The problem is that training is fundamentally broken. So, unlike in a manufacturing context where someone walks through the door and then you check their forklift license and you do this, that works well. But cyber training, unfortunately, is because what we do with cyber training is we give the same training to everybody. Everything we do should be based on risk. And if that's the case, then we cannot train people the same way every time. Your chief exec is not the same risk profile as a shop floor operative. An accounts payable clerk probably has a higher risk profile than the chief exec, because the accounts payable clerk is potentially keying things in and sending money to suppliers. And that's really what's not working, with the solutions that are out there, unfortunately. You don't have a proper feedback loop. So if you don't do very well on the training, we don't then adjust our strategy as a result of that. We don't then do things in a different way for you. We don't think about your learning styles, and maybe giving you a video isn't really the thing that's going to click for you. We don't do any of those things. So really what we should be doing is we should be taking risk, signals from across the business. And I'm thinking things like, say, your role. We should factor your role in there. We should factor your tenure into there, into the calculation. We should be looking at your location. We should be looking at your level of IT literacy, because a low level of IT literacy may present a higher risk, but also a very high level of IT literacy may present a higher risk as well. And we should be looking at your behavioral characteristics. How risk averse are you? Are you someone who will quite happily click on things, or are you someone who takes a more, measured approach to your work? We should be looking at the training outcomes. So we should be looking at how you do in your training and tailoring things going forwards. We should be looking at phishing tests. And I know there's a lot of discussion about the effectiveness of phishing tests, but we shouldn't be using them as a stick to hit somebody with. It should be something that flies under the radar in the background, so they don't know that they've failed something. It just gives a different screen or whatever. But there's no enforcement of, well, you've done this badly. But we use that again as another risk signal that we factor into the mix, and the threat landscape as a whole. So if you're, again, I've used the example a few times, but if you're financial services, defense sector, government, something like that, we should be taking those signals and building that into the program as well. And then overall, if that means that David Moulton is not a risk, why are we giving you training every month? Maybe we only give you training every 3 months, and maybe we just send something that's topical at the time. Maybe when ChatGPT and the AI chat apps come along, we maybe give you some spot training on that one. Maybe there's some threat intel that comes through. We're going to give you some training because of that. Those are the things that should inform it. If that means that, and then we give the right amount of training at the right way to the right people, and not just the sheep dip approach we do at the moment.
When I was a designer, we called Kairos, the god of opportunity, the name of good UI design. When we could put something together that nudged your behavior in the right direction at the right moment. And in London, there's a sign on the pavement that says, "Look right." It's useful as you're about to step out into traffic. It's not useful to be told, "Look right," when you're planning your trip. It's not useful on the flight over or at customs. It's useful when you're about to step out. And I wonder if there is innovative software out there, innovative programs that are leaning into this idea of how to effectively deliver security training.
So I think one company that's doing something very interesting in this space is Dune Security. So that's DUNE Security. They're doing some really interesting stuff in this space, and they're trying to do exactly what I've talked about and deliver the right training in the right way. Even if you've got two people doing the same role, maybe they don't need the same training, because maybe they're operating in a different way. So being able to bring all those risk signals in and then calculate that, and ultimately give people a risk score that then determines the training that they're going to receive. Those guys, they're still relatively small at the moment, but I think if I was one of the established security awareness training vendors, I would be getting worried, because I think there is about to be a paradigm shift in this market, I think.
Sam, let's get into supply chain resilience. How can businesses build resilience into their supply chain to mitigate those cyber risks they face?
I think this is actually very, very difficult. Because of the number of, the small number of hyperscalers out there, I think it is actually very, very difficult. Because you can take solutions from tech companies, but you never know where that tech company is hosting. So in Palo's world, most of your stuff is in GCP. You've got the likes of, say, Netflix that are on AWS. All the other, God knows how many companies are on AWS. Azure obviously is a big platform as well. So I think it's very, very difficult to really quantify that. We don't try and, build our own solutions. We go and we take best of breed, or we take, a platform approach, however we're going to do it. And we put an awful lot of faith and trust in these organizations to deliver for us. And I wonder how many organizations out there truly do the due diligence to understand where the dependencies are and how open some of our tech providers are about the dependencies that they have. Yes, we can scrutinize data protection, data processing statements in contracts and things like that, and try and understand who their processors are. But even if it turns out, if you were to look at your whole estate, and if you were to say most of them are using AWS or most of them are using GCP or whatever it is, would that genuinely change your approach? Would you genuinely look to a different provider that was maybe hosted in AWS or hosted in its own data center, which is unlikely these days? Would you do that? I don't know. I really don't know how you would do that. I think making sure that you understand the risk is the important thing. I'm not entirely sure that you're going to be able to do a huge amount about it these days.
So you've mentioned some of the hyperscalers. I'm wondering, are there other technologies that you see as often overlooked because of their vulnerabilities? And are those the ones that we should be focused on because we have more of a chance to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, I think open source projects is probably one of those areas that, whilst it's been discussed a lot in the information security community over the last few years, I don't really see a huge amount of progress in a lot of areas. I think if you were to go through a software bill of materials with all of the products, even just all of the enterprise products in your portfolio, I think we would honestly be horrified to see how many of them are supported or underpinned by an open source project that's maybe got 3 contributors, and maybe one of them is looking to retire and really doesn't want to continue contributing to it anymore. Those sorts of things. I think that's probably the biggest issue I see that people aren't talking loudly enough about. I think this is going to continue to be the thing that bites us in the ass. There are so many, as we've seen the last couple of weeks, there's some more research done around, the number of GitHub repos that are hosting things that are maybe rather undesirable. And I think there needs to be some real effort to try and clean that up. And for software developers to understand, to genuinely think about where they're taking, some of the code that they're then deploying in their solutions. I don't think most companies have got a real good answer to this yet. If we were very open about it, are there many businesses out there that are really that have been very, very careful and vetting the open source projects that the developers are allowed to use? I'm going to say probably not. So I can imagine this one is, and I hope this one is going to start generating more and more noise as we go forward, and hopefully, collectively we will come up with a solution to this where the really important projects are properly supported, and not just by 3 people who have a full-time day job but then try and do the best they can on a weekend.
As you were talking, Sam, you reminded me of this is a strange one. Are you familiar with the Cobalt Cowboys here in Texas?
No.
All right. So end of life language. Nobody's developing in this, right? During COVID, a bunch of unemployment needed to go out, and systems with web front ends were getting just destroyed. A lot of unemployment requests, and nobody knew how to build or update the back ends. It was just wild to me that so many states were reliant on a technology they didn't have anyone, no one that could work on it, and were forced to bid against one another to get their systems. So New Jersey was trying to outbid, Connecticut, which was trying to outbid Texas, was just trying to outbid, just run it. I mean, the idea of bubblegum and duct tape putting our IT world together was introduced to me years ago. And when I see stuff like this and it's still going, there's moments when I'm like, it's amazing it works as well as it does. But back to your whole risk thing, I don't even know how you assess and quantify how long will Bill, God bless the guy, hope he sticks around for a long, long life, be able to do what he's doing if New Jersey's counting on getting unemployment checks out, fortunately not during a global pandemic anymore, but it blew my mind that was what was going on. And of course it comes across my desk and I went, oh, that's probably not good.
Yeah, I think the other area that's heading that way is got to be what used to be AS400 or is now iSeries. That's that mid-range platform from IBM. It's only a matter of time before, because businesses, here in the UK are struggling to find developers who work on, with those languages. Because let's face it, no computer science graduate comes out of university and thinks, "Woohoo! I know what I'm going to learn RPG 400."
And maybe that's the zig strategy when everyone else zags, is you're going and looking at things that are end of life and dead, because then you are the choice.
Yeah.
Are you the best? Yes. Are you the worst? Probably. Doesn't matter. You're the choice. You're the answer to the problem today because you are the only one that exists. All right. Well, we didn't get on this podcast to talk about career advice for brand new computer science grads, but maybe this is an unusual strategy for some to consider. Mm-hmm. So, Sam, let's wrap up the conversation and talk about business continuity for a minute. Are there strategies that businesses should employ to maintain their operations during a cyber attack?
Yeah, I think for me, this one comes down to preparedness is the key. There will be during an incident, there are going to be problems that you have to solve. But if you can have already solved most of those problems in a scenario, in a tabletop exercise, things like that, it's going to make that whole process so much smoother for you. Because not only have you thought about how you're going to fix it, but hopefully you've also then put the necessary steps in place so that you're not having to invent it on the fly during the incident. Because it's going to be difficult enough as it is. So making sure that you're prepared, that is absolutely the number one thing you can do. Know who needs to do things, how they're going to do it, where they're going to do it, and when they're going to do it. Making sure that you're communicating, effectively across the teams. Because communication is absolutely key during the incident. Who knows? Do you know how to invoke the plan? Who's allowed to invoke the plan? Do you know who you need to communicate with? How are you communicating just within the crisis management team? Have you solved how are you going to do that? And if your primary method of communication isn't available because of the incident, do you have a backup method of communication? Do you have something to fall back to? Are they lined up? Have they got a playbook of how to do that? Because you cannot wheel a normal chief executive or out to talk to the media. They need to be trained. They need to be schooled on how to do this effectively. So that they can convey the right message in the right way.
I remember having a conversation with Caleb Barlow years ago about this very thing, where everyone has an idea of what the playbook is, where the playbook's kept on a shelf, and they go to open up at the time a WebEx call, and nobody had the password to get into the WebEx. So their tabletop revealed that at step 1, join call, everything fell apart. And it just struck me of like the littlest thing can be the Achilles heel. And if you've not done the preparation and run it through as a test to make sure you know how to run your playbook during a crisis, you're going to find that you really wish you had when it wasn't a high stress live act. It was while you could go back and make that update. He also talked a little bit about the number of executives that would come in and with the training, somebody would come in as a part of the press and stick a camera in their face and ask questions. And even though they knew it wasn't a real event, their emotion, their panic would kick in, and they couldn't handle a fake interview in practice And it just showed the value of bringing the executives, bringing some of the other portions of the business into that response and making sure that it wasn't just the security team that fully understood what the playbook was, but the whole of business understood how to respond. And I think that's what you're getting to, is that in that response, it's not just the security team that's going to get you through it. It's the entire business.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm very clear with the businesses that it is their business and it is their incident. I am here to help, and I will manage the technical sides of that incident. But ultimately, you've got a business to run, and that's why when we run tabletop exercises, we ask for all of the people who would be involved in an incident. In real life, bring all of those people into that room and give all of them an experience of what it's going to be like. It's not the same, and we do it as a, training exercise that, it's not an assessment or something like that, but, letting them go through that process and ask those questions and think about what they're going to do, in a training environment is absolutely invaluable.
Sam, what's the most important thing that a listener should remember from today's conversation?
Preparedness is the number one thing. You are not ready for an incident unless you have prepared appropriately. And preparing doesn't mean making sure that you've got a load of policies in place. It means, have those policies been trained out to the organization? Do they know how to execute against them? Have you executed against them? And then have you made updates as a result of those executions? Is everybody ready to assume the roles that you think they're going to assume during an actual incident? And do you have a feedback loop in place so that when you have exercises, when you have any kind of reviews, when you have, God forbid, an incident itself, do you have a feedback loop in place that will allow you to get better as an organization? Can you take the learnings and make sure that next time you're not going to suffer the same issues you did the first time round?
Sam, thank you for being on Threat Vector today and for this really fascinating conversation on both cyber resilience and for sharing your personal philosophy on growth and continuing to learn, putting yourself in those scary situations where you may suck, but you're going to come out better for it.
No, thank you very much for having me.
That's it for today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your reviews and feedback really do help us understand what you want to hear about. If you want to reach out to me directly about the show, email me at threatvector@paloaltonetworks.com. I want to thank our executive producer, Michael Heller, our content and production teams, which include Kenny Miller, Joe Betancourt, and Virginia Tran. Elliot Peltzman edits the show and mixes the audio. We'll be back next week. Until then, stay secure, stay vigilant. Goodbye for now.